Meeting to order for Monday, August 12th, 2019. Carl, can I get a roll call from you? Is my microphone doing that? Probably.
I can hear you.
Carl, go ahead with the roll call.
Councilmember Remley, Ronayne, Lunsman, Reif, Johnson, Bunceness,
Here.
Olson,
Here.
Rux,
Here.
Mayor Schauneman.
Here, please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First order of business is to approve the minutes from last week's meeting.
Moved. Second.
I would know one change. I think the minutes from last minute meeting reflect that I was there. I was not present at that meeting.
But you were
Yeah.
present.
You're there in
Yeah,
spirit.
yeah. We wouldn't want
Carl,
you to get credit.
let's make that note on the minutes from last meeting. We'll have a motion to approve from Bunceness in a second. Who was that over there? From Mr. Rux to approve the minutes with that change. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. That motion does carry. Next, we have an open forum speaker. We have Mrs. Betty M. Sheldon, who's here to speak on the sign ordinance. Betty, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and it's not Mrs. anymore. I've been widowed for several years.
I'm sorry to
It's
have
not a
said
problem.
that.
I just thought I'd say that for fun of it. I don't have a...
There's a microphone there. Please, the people that are watching on television will be able to hear you.
We don't want them to miss this. Thank you for making this available for us to come in. I hope to come more often because I just have an abiding interest in what goes on in our town. And I think I have time to take more interest actively. So I will come and see you when I can. Just a little preface, I grew up in Aberdeen a long time ago, and I retired here 11 years ago, and I'm really glad I did. I see many improvements, a lot more culture and art and music, things that I'm really interested in, and a nice peaceful way of living, and it's gradually becoming more diverse, and that's really important to me. Prior to retirement, I lived in Lincoln, Nebraska, and managed the Motel 6, and it's a beautiful city, and I considered staying there. And one of the things I liked about Lincoln so much was the diversity of the population. That brings along with it more foods, more music, more celebrations, and more people to hear and learn from. I had people working for me that helped me to learn Spanish and Vietnamese and invited me to quinceañeras and other festive occasions that now we could probably find in Aberdeen, but when I grew up here, we never heard of such a thing. So I just expressed my appreciation for the city of Aberdeen, and it'll be my home as far as I know until they drag me out here feet first. My concern about the signs, and I'm not well-versed, I have not been able to find the minutes today. I've not been able to find the ordinance until Mr. Rux so kindly emailed it to me, but now I cannot get it to download fast enough for me to read it before you take it up today. Hopefully, it isn't going to be anything that I just find awful. Generally speaking, I like the way it looks when you drive into Aberdeen now. You can find things. Things are not flashing and bashing and making a lot of noise at us as we come into town. And I don't like that about the big cities. I'm not opposed to big cities, but I don't like it when you're so blinded by the so-called attractions that you can't find them or can't keep track of the street signs that tell you where you are. And I would really dread to see Aberdeen change in that way so that it's too confusing. We do well to attract people from other small communities to come and shop here instead of going to the bigger cities, and I think a lot of them come because they're more relaxed here. It has that atmosphere, and yet it offers everything that I need. And I think a lot of other people feel that way as far as purchasing things and doing businesses. We're lucky to have everything we have. So that's what I'm here for. I may not have anything more to say, but I will be paying attention. Is there possibly a written, printed copy of the ordinance that's available here tonight?
We could probably get it up on the screen with the
Oh,
amendment
okay.
change, if you'll hang on for just a minute, or perhaps Ron has one for you.
Okay. I was having a little difficulty navigating the city website and trying to find information about the meeting. I couldn't find the minutes of the last meeting. I couldn't find
Sure.
the agenda online today.
Well, I can, Yeah, sometimes that stuff is a little bit buried in the site, but once you're familiar with where it's at, it'll be a lot easier
Well,
to
I
find.
looked where it said agendas and minutes and nothing recent.
There's a
came up.
hyperlink on the page under city council members. If you click on the hyperlink, it pulls up each week's, the previous week's minutes as well as the agenda for each week. So it's about 4 clicks in when you get to the homepage. But once you find it, you go to the government link on the top, then council, and then under council, there's a hyperlink in the body text. But
What's a hyperlink? I don't understand hyperlink.
words that you can click right there in the language of the site.
Okay, I did that, and I still couldn't get to the minutes of last week.
That's where I was able to find them, but
Okay.
there's perhaps a.
You probably have a
issue.
more expensive computer than
I might.
maybe
I
you've
might.
paid your bill. No, you don't need to mess
A
with it,
couple
Dave,
of-
but
a
if there are
couple-
things that can be done to make it a little more user-friendly, it would be nice.
Sure. Yeah, there's just a lot of information on that
And I
site.
looked through the paper, I get the paper digitally every day, and so I was trying to find, well, maybe they're in here somewhere, and I couldn't find it in the public announcements, the announcement of what was what for
Sure.
tonight, so.
A couple of notes to your points, because you share the same concern that a lot of people that have kind of expressed any concern among, additionally, people that are on this council as well. There's stipulations on the ordinance that once digital billboards are allowed, if they are, the luminosity will have to adjust based on a sensor, as compared to the ambient light outside. So at nighttime, they won't be nearly as bright as the message boards that you see attached to gas station signs and banks and so forth. So that was one thing that we did to really make sure that that wouldn't create that Las Vegas atmosphere that people are looking to avoid.
Let them go to Las Vegas. for
Let them
that.
go to Las Vegas. That's right. We have plenty of little casinos, but we'll keep it at that. There will be no new additional billboards. It's virtually impossible to find space in any traveled area in this community that fits all the criteria. And so that's where that language that we've been mostly debating has come from, is how do we allow for some digital billboards to exist, but also in a responsible way so that they don't clutter the atmosphere and create a lot of extra visual noise. So I think that we've kind of covered those two things. It'll be dimmer than the My Place billboard, which tends to be very, very bright at night. And there will be no new additional signs. At this point, the only thing that will be allowed is for certain signs to be replaced.
Okay.
And they'll have to be a certain distance away from homes, and they'll have to have already been authorized for at least one other variant. So it could just be the one at Cartney Bearing at this stage in the game that follows all the right criteria. But
That brings to mind something I may not understand, but there was something in the original language I read when the first ordinance came up that allowed for sort of a variance for existing signs that they could update to digital, which perhaps wasn't allowed in the present ordinance. Is that going to happen
digital
with this?
billboards are not allowed at all currently. This will allow for them, and it will allow certain exceptions for them to be replaced, but on a very limited basis from the looks of things, because they would have already have had to have gone through a variance process for that location.
Okay.
Every one of the billboards in this community, with maybe one exception, is non-compliant as it relates to the existing ordinance, so they won't be able to just switch them, each and every one of them. They'll have had to have already gone through the variance process.
And so now maybe you're changing the threshold or whatever for them to,
City's code enforcement presented a modification to the amendment in order to make them a little bit more difficult to come across.
thank you, that helps.
You're welcome.
That's
Thanks for
all.
speaking. Do you have any other questions or
No,
thoughts?
no, not
Any
today.
council member have any questions for Betty before she leaves? Thank you for your time, Betty.
Oh, you're welcome, I appreciate it.
With that, we'll move on to old business. We'll actually take on that ordinance that we're speaking about. First order of business is the amendment of the zoning regulations of the city code regarding illuminated and electronic message boards, final adoption, potential second reading. That's not here tonight. Ron, have you got anything to say?
I guess I'll represent administration that to my knowledge, neither Brett nor Lynn have received any comments opposing or in support of the change. We are here now at this time for final adoption. I wanted to make sure that the council understands that our legislature did a terrible job of drafting the language that requires a third reading, which is essentially what we're doing here tonight. So it does get a little confusing, but tonight's formal action is to have the hearing, final hearing, and then to finally adopt the ordinance as amended last week.
I get a motion for the possible adoption, second reading?
Do we need to have the hearing first, or when are we, is this it?
This is it. Is anybody here, I imagine, to speak out? We had Ms. Sheldon talk about if anybody else is here pursuant to the hearing.
I don't understand, excuse me, I should raise my hand. I don't understand how a person can know if they haven't had an opportunity to see how to bring up a discussion.
What, can I respond to that? Ms. Sheldon, I understand that that's frustrating for you. By statute, the city is required to place the notice on its website, which it has, and included with that notice was the actual ordinance as approved for second reading, at second reading. So the city has complied. I know it's been frustrating for you because you were trying to find it and were unable to find it, but from our standpoint, that's all we can do is put it up there and hope that people are able to navigate to it and have an opportunity to review it.
I saw the notice of this meeting and what was gonna happen, but I didn't see a place to bring up, and it didn't come up.
And I wish that we had a better system too, but that's all we have right now is placing it on a website and trying to work it in a way that we think people will be able to get to there.
And may I suggest along that line that it might have been very helpful to have a printed copy or two here. I came at 5 o'clock hoping I could find that. And like I said, Clint did send it to me, but I don't have enough data to bring up, all those pages so I could actually read it.
So I'll make the
I would move to
motion.
approve the ordinance.
Second.
Motion, Ronayne, second, Bunceness. What discussion have we on this topic today? It passed without exception. Last week with Brett's amendment, does anyone have anything to contribute in terms of conversation today? We will take a roll call vote for that. Carl, would you please do that?
Councilmember Ronayne,
Aye.
Lunsman,
Aye.
Rife,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Bunceness,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Rux,
Aye.
Mayor Shonneman.
Aye. The motion does carry. Next, we've got consent calendar items A and B. Possible approval of routine city business. I get a motion to approve the two consent calendar items.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion from Johnson and a second from Lunsman. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That motion does carry for consent calendar items. Moving on to new business. First item at hand is a discussion regarding the activities of the Charter Revision Subcommittee and the manner of proposing charter revision ordinance to the voters. Dave, you brought that to our attention a couple of weeks ago in this meeting. Ron, what have you got to tell us about with this?
I'm more than happy to discuss this, but I would also defer to either of the two subcommittee members if you'd rather take the lead on this. But essentially, we're just looking for the opening discussion.
You know, Ron, it probably is appropriate that you do so because, quite honestly, you did all the work.
I agree.
David and I were pleased to be part of the subcommittee. Jennifer Slade-Hansen joined us before she left office. But Ron did a really nice job, I think, of going through the entire charter. The proposal that we have before you would make lots of technical amendments, lots of housekeeping, what he refers to as housekeeping matters. And the suggestion is that this is probably in a position, in a place where we could solicit what other changes the council wishes to make and bring it to a vote of the public. But it's really in pretty good shape, and I commend the city attorney for the excellent work that he did putting this into good shape.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Rob said. I think in the overview, Ron lays out basically 4 items that I think we should follow. I think that'll help us through this process.
Carl, if you can get to that page 34, there you go. Can you make that bigger?
It's not me,
Oh. Oh, Robin's there.
so no, I cannot.
You want it bigger?
Yeah, can you expand it? So what was provided along with the agenda packet was the tentative draft that the subcommittee had put together, and tentative is an intentional word there because this is by no means any kind of a polished item that we're presenting at this time. What we're doing is this is the springboard to the discussions that we hope will include the council and, as best we can, try to get public input on these changes. We feel that the more the public is part of this, the better success there would be of anything passed by this council being approved by the voters. And again, the process, so that everyone is aware, is that we will look at and work through and hopefully put together a rewrite, I shouldn't say rewrite, but a revision to the charter that the council would eventually adopt as an ordinance. That ordinance would then be placed in the pipeline for an election, whether that election is at the municipal elections in June, the general election in November, or a special election. And I had prepared for the council just tentative discussion topics tonight to walk through this. But again, this is the very beginning of this process. And I think as you read the tentative draft, you'll see that it's really not as big of a bite as you think, and that maybe we could pound through this thing in a session, in an hour. That a lot of the revisions, the suggested changes are housekeeping in nature, and we do have a number of substantive, but not controversially substantive changes, and then a couple that we can discuss in greater detail. Just putting it out, I already had one person make a very good suggestion to me, so I know that the public can have some input on this, and we would want to figure out a way to do that. But what I would propose is that we talk about how do we want to at least have that first conversation that substantively discusses this. Do you want to do it as a work session? Do you want to do it as a as a set of a block of time within a regular council meeting? And we'll just pound through and go as far as we can in that block of time, and then decide, pick it up at another block of time, but keep it at a regular council meeting if that would be the preferred way. And then thinking about too, how do we put this out to the public? I mean, at what stage do you want it out to the public? Do you want it in this early form? Do you want them to be part of this process? Do you want to put it out on the website and whatever other media we deem appropriate as we get something that we think is a closer version of what it is ultimately we want? That again is up to you. I would prefer to get them in early and often on this. Have this process wide open, see what kind of comments we get, and see how we can work and integrate that stuff. So the first question that I had was, how do you want to proceed with discussion and debate of these recommended changes at this point? So, any thoughts?
Rob?
Thank you. You know, I do like the idea of getting this, what you refer to as a tentative draft, on the website, letting the Betty Sheldons of the world take a look at it, let her print it out and let her take a look at it, and see if the public has some suggestions. And then I think we set this for a 4 o'clock work session someday, and I think you're right. I think we can get through that in an afternoon, and then go to our regular business at 5:30. But allow the public to come in and if we need to do that on subsequent work sessions, I think that's terrific.
We have time, so I mean, there's not an election until next June at the earliest. So yeah, like I say, I like the idea of work sessions. I mean, even though it looks like a lot of them are just correcting punctuation and grammar, there are some in there that would deserve a little discussion.
So what I could do is make arrangements to post this on our website, to have copies available, printed copies available, probably just at our office, at the city manager's, city attorney's office for members of the public. We could also make sure that we schedule, we'll say about a month down the road, we'll schedule that 4 o'clock work session and try to get that also on the agenda so that the public can come and be part of that.
Absolutely.
Maybe have that with an open forum, and if people have looked through and have ideas, let's hear it then. Work through that and get as much done as we can by 5:15-ish, and hopefully we can knock the whole thing out. If not, we can do another one.
Right.
So that kind of helps me with number 2, is we will continue to, once we get that presence on our website, we can just continue to keep putting up new versions or even new ideas. If people come in with written proposals, we can add those as well and make that part of what's on the website. And then eventually, of course, we would get to where we feel we have that draft that everybody's comfortable with, and we would start the ordinance process at that point. So I'm looking at, number 3. And again, we don't necessarily have to have this conversation tonight, but we do need to keep in mind that that there's a coordination process between that adoption of the ordinance and the election, because we are limited by charter and by state law and by the logistical requirements of the auditor's office to make sure that we've got enough time ahead. And depending on the size of the ballot, if we're literally printing the entire revised charter, that could be a large ballot. And how do we do that? But the timing is going to be necessary because we don't want to get too far ahead and too far behind the adoption of our ordinance, so that we can coordinate it with what we think is a good time for a special election, or for an election, I'm sorry. And again, we can have an election at a regular municipal elections in June of 2020. We can have it a special election, and I should inform the council that the last special election we had was for the library, and that came in at a total cost of about $13,000. So we just need to keep that in mind. And then we could also put it on a general election ballot in November of 2020. So we have options there. We just need to make sure that we're keeping that in mind. And if there's any kind of a desire at this point to be working towards, for example, the June election, let us know. Let me know, so that we can be moving things in that window. All right? Okay, and that basically takes care of my 1, 2, 3, and 4. And what we'll plan to do is start it off with a work session about a month from now at 4 o'clock.
So my only question is, do we have a feel for if the general public even, their knowledge about our charter? And, what is the reason for these changes? Should we have maybe some education prior to our work session so we can dig in at 4 o'clock?
What I will try to do is maybe create a page on our website, and I don't know what else to do, that
American News is here, maybe they can have an article.
maybe they could. But we would establish just the history and the issues that we found and why we're making these changes, and essentially how we hope the process to go. And I think it's great to encourage people to read the charter. It's, depending on your approach, it may not be the most exciting read, but it can be very interesting and enlightening to go through that process. So, I don't know what kind of general response we'll have, but that's the best I can think of.
Mm-hmm. It would be nice to have an executive summary like the Attorney General does before something that goes before the state. Yeah.
Okay, I'll work on my staff to get that put together. But yeah, you're right. That's what we would look at, something like that.
Same kind of thing.
So thank you very much. I don't know that there's any more direction I need at this point on this issue. So.
Sounds good. Well, we've got marching orders for an executive session on the topic. Next order of business is hearing on a special 5-day retail on-sale liquor license for September 4th through 8th for Act 2, DBA Aberdeen Community Theater at 415 South Main Street. Is someone here from Act 2 to speak on this? Otherwise, I will let you say a word or two. Ron?
I think this is a standard hearing time for these 5-day retail. Act does prefer to try to get a block of these at a time, so just a matter of entertaining a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Second.
Got a motion from Ronayne, second from Lunsman. All in favor of approving the special 5-day on-sale liquor license, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. Motion does carry. Next order of business is the recommendation of rebids for the airport taxiway improvements, possible approval of the tentative award for the AIP project to Reedy Construction in the amount of $4,558,937 contingent upon receipt of the FAA grant offer. Rich, you you're here to talk to us about that.
I'm asking for council to approve Lynn to sign any of the necessary FAA documentation. As you stated, the bid Schedule A and bid Schedule B of the rebid came in at the amount of $4,558,937.50, and the city's 5% share on that is $240,500.
Move approval.
Second.
A motion from Bunceness and a second from Johnson. Carl, can I get a roll call vote on that, please?
Councilmember Rux,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Bunceness.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Rife,
Aye.
Lunsman.
Aye.
Ronayne.
Aye.
Mayor Shonneman.
Aye. Motion does pass.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in, Rich. Next item, we've got joint funding agreement for the stream gauging, the USGS approval, possible approval of agreement for continuing operation and maintenance of the Moccasin Creek and Foot Creek stream gauges in the amount of $22,560. Robin, what can you tell us about those gauges?
We've been doing this for years with the USGS as a partner. During years of high water like we had this spring, they are extremely valuable to us to be able to try to gauge where we're at with areas that may be a little more vulnerable. We can see how things are moving their way downstream toward the water treatment plant. You've got infrastructure upstream from the community too, and downstream down by the wastewater treatment plant. This particular agreement also adds in one additional stream gauge down by 281 just south of the wastewater treatment plant, which should help us do some things to help if during the times where they may need to use the big pump at the airport. So this does anticipate having an additional stream gauging station in there. So
Move approve.
Second.
Motion from Rux, second from Olson, to approve the $22,560 payment. Carl, can I get a roll? Oh, I'm sorry. What do we got? Rob, what have
I
you got?
should have asked you, Robin, this beforehand, but I thought you misspelled the word gauge, but I see that's actually in the materials from the government, from the United States. What is a GAGE gauge?
a gauge is a measurement device.
It's just like a
Yes.
GUAG.
Yes.
Okay. When I looked it up, I found that a gauge is an obsolescent word meaning a pledge, a challenge, etc. And I see it's just it's what you engineers
It's
call
a
a gauge.
Federal government, federal government's process, yes.
Rob, if it brings you comfort, I looked it up too.
You, Ron, are anal retention.
You guys need something better to do.
Challenges down the river, I guess, we'll have. All right, Carl, can you give us a roll call vote on that one, please?
Councilmember Ronayne.
Aye.
Lunsman.
Aye.
Rife.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Bunceness.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Rux.
Aye.
Mayor Shonneman.
Aye, that motion does carry. Next order of business is change order 1 and payment estimate 1 for Klein Street Storm Sewer Improvements. Possible approval of change order 1 in the amount of $352. Payment 1 and estimate amount of $226,693 to B&B Contracting for the work on the Storm Sewer Klein project. Robin, what can you tell us about those payments?
Change order is just for an item that was not in the bid. We're just making sure we're reconciling that early. A lot of times we won't bother with a $352 change order, but in this case they decided because it was not part of our original bid, we'd do it. And really what we're paying for through the estimate is the demolition of all the pavements at this point on the north side. So this is only for stuff north of the tracks, and they have attempted in the rains and everything else to install storm sewer and sanitary sewer. They'll be working on some water main here shortly, and you will see equipment. They have done the demolition on the south side down on 15th Avenue now too, but that's not part of this. So
Move approval.
Second.
Got a motion for approval of the payment from Dave Bunceness and a second from Michael Olson. Carl, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Rux.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Bunceness.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Rife.
Aye.
Lunsman.
Aye.
Ronayne.
Aye.
Mayor Shonneman.
Aye. That motion also does carry. Next item I bid is Robin again, the change order number 2 and payment estimate for the mill and overlay improvements and a possible change order in the amount of $20,167. The payment in the amount of $114,001 to Jensen Rock and Sand. What can you tell us about those?
We have added a fair amount of concrete work to do this project, maybe a little better than what some of them turn out. We're trying to correct some drainage things. Obviously, the minute that we do that, we're also affecting some of our ADA compliance stuff. So it's a double whammy for us in part of this. And then they have moved in and started some of the milling today. As you've probably seen on First Avenue, they should be complete pretty soon on Second Street, and then they'll move over to Main Street. So
I'll make the motion. Or second it.
Second.
I'll make the motion. He seconded.
That's what I thought you did.
Yeah, I
A
did.
motion for payment and change.
I have a
order.
question, though.
Oh, Dave, what have you?
So you talked about fixing the drainage, and after one of the big rains, I think it was on Thursday, coming on First over by the Clark Title Building, there was a pretty sizable pond in the parking. So what are we doing to correct that? Or is that just because?
unplugging a storm sewer.
Oh,
There's a storm
that's a
sewer
pretty
that was
easy
not-
solution.
yeah,
Thank you.
that's- I had the same reaction. I said, what did we do on this part? And that, there's a storm grate there that, so we've got some material we've got to clear out of that drain to make it work better.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
While you're talking about particulars, what about the big hole by Mazatlan? I've had about 10 people ask me about that.
Yep, and actually, the newspaper called today about that one too. That is a collapsed manhole. Materials are on order, but we also have some older pipe that we're gonna end up doing some additional piping going west as well. So it's a larger project than just the hole you're seeing right now. But we will be completing that here, I would guess, within a month or so.
Great, thank you, Robin. Can I get, we've got a motion, Bunceness, second from, was it you?
Rob?
Ronayne. Carl, can I get a roll call vote on those two payments?
Councilmember Ronayne.
Aye.
Lunsman.
Aye.
Rife.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Bunceness.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Rux.
Aye.
Mayor Shoneman.
Aye. Motion does carry. Next item to discuss is the bills, approval of the bill list from August 19th. We also had one additional bill to add to that list, which is Northwestern Public Service for the amount of $3,244.73, which you can add to the list.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion from Olson, second from Rux. Can I get a roll call vote on that, Carl?
Councilmember Rux.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Bunceness.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Rife.
Aye.
Lunsman.
Aye.
Ronayne.
Aye.
Mayor Shoneman.
Aye. Bills will be paid. Motion does carry. Next item to discuss will be the payroll for the period of August 4th through August 17th. City's share of Social Security, old age, survivor's insurance, retirement, health, and life insurance. Can I get a motion to make that payment?
Moved.
Second.
I've got a motion from Johnson and a second from Olson. Carl, can I get a roll call vote on that, please?
Councilmember Ronayne.
Aye.
Lunsman.
Aye.
Rife.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Bunceness.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Rux.
Aye.
Mayor Shoneman.
Aye. Motion does carry. Next, we've got several executive session items. Are there anything to discuss before we ask the crowd to leave us for executive session?
Move to enter executive session?
Second.
Motion from Ronay and a second from Olson. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.